Hello, my name's Stephen Porter, and this is a Londonderry Bands from Podcast for Good Relations Week. We're running 3 podcasts this week. This is the first one, and about the history of the William King Memorial Flute Band and how they went from humble beginnings here in the Fountain Estate to become one of the most respected bands in the country. I'm joined now by founder member of the William King Memorial Flute Band, John Rankin. Thank you for joining me today, John.
Welcome.
So, just to start, can you tell us a bit about background about yourself and your life before the band in the Fountain?
Life before the band in the Fountain was just a normal young child's life, more or less, where you went to primary school, you come back, you maybe get gathered up with the boys at night, and you went over to the Cathedral Playground there, and we played football. Sometimes I wonder how we get so many into that small square, but that was more or less our life. We just played football and played snooker and stuff like that there, and down the CA, down Fergie Street there. And was just general hanging about, probably playing chasing, as we would have called it, where you'd have been away round the block and somebody would have had to catch you, and it's just ordinary child's playing, you know.
How did the Troubles then sort of affect you, and how did it come about with the Fountain?
Well, the Fountain was under a lot of problems at the time, and it got to the stage that we were more or less kept on the Fountain, because if you went outside there was always bother, and we just got used to hanging about our own area just, and that was it, you know. Going down the town, that was probably out of bounds at that time because of the Troubles, but we just made our own fun just in the area. That was more or less it.
So one of the things that you were probably leading on to, and the fun that was starting out the band. But
Yeah.
before the band, did you have any experience in banding, and did you join any bands prior to the William King?
Well, 4 or 5 weeks just in the No Surrender band, which practiced in Barrack Street. But it was beyond me at that time, and it was a wee bit too hard for it. It was only 9 or 10. So I just left it again.
So the William King Memorial Flute Band is your band. You were the founder, one of the founder members of the band. So how did you and the other people of the Fountain come to create this band?
Well, it was just one night we were standing and having a chat and one thing another, and we decided then, between 3 or 4 of us, and we says, what about forming a band? So we decided then we'd go and get names to see what sort of response we would get. And at that time we get a response. I think we had 12 flutes and 4 drummers, bass drummer and a leader. So it was obvious then that we had to raise funds. So what we done was we went round the doors and asked would the people in the Fountain subscribe on a weekly basis to support the band. And I think it was, at that time, it was called a shilling a week, which is now 5p. So we went round and took a book with us, and we left at maybe £7-8 on a Friday night. But things weren't to steer then. What we done then was we decided on a uniform, and we got jumpers knit at £1 each. A lady in the estate had a knit machine, and she knit us crimson and orange jumpers. And we'd obviously 10 flutes, and one of the bandmaster at that time was a fellow called Hugh McGowan, and we practiced up in the old bar in the Fountain, which was derelict. The Stott family had moved on it after they were bombed in the Guildhall, and we practiced in their front room more or less, and that's how we get things going at the start, you know.
How did you start learning music or learning the tunes at that time?
Well, say it was Hugh McGowan. He put us through the tunes. We were first out, and we started in '73 practicing, and we were out around Easter in '74. But I wouldn't like to hear the tunes now that we played. You know, that Brights that day. I think I made about 2 or 3 flitters playing, you know. But we've come a long way since that, as you all know, you know.
The band also, obviously, by what you were saying about collecting money from the area, always had a and the fountain had a special connection to the band. How much do you feel proud of that connection to the area, and then even naming the band after William King as well, who was a resident?
Well, William King was obviously murdered at London Street there, and when we were looking for a name for the band, we decided that we would ask the King family to use William King's name, and we called the band the William King Memorial. And as I say, we just went from strength to strength and up until maybe 75, when things started to dip a wee bit. We actually started to spend more time playing football and we did practicing. And in my opinion, the band started to decline. And in November of that year, we lost a very good member. He was shot dead over in the fountain, Robert Studd, Bobby. And after that happened, the band sort of knit together again. And we never looked back since.
How did that affect the band at that time? Did you want to, or it brought you closer together, but was there any chance, do you think, that the band might have folded prior to that then?
Well, it's hard to say, but maybe the interest would have picked up again, you know. But as I say, we spent more time playing football. At that stage, we moved. The place we practiced was knocked down, and there was a small building in the fountain, which was up the Cathedral Youth Club as now, and we had no electricity on it, and I lived beside it more or less, and I missed net, and I run an extension lead from my house over under the hall.
Yeah.
And we got a key and we went under it, and that's where we practiced until the early 80s when we moved to Britannia Hall. And then after the Britannia Hall, we moved on to Memorial Hall, which lasts probably 30 years. And that's where we still practice at the minute.
So you said there about the early days, some of the music was a bit ropey. How did you progress then to become better and with the with marches and basically style and appearance and so on?
The style and appearance thing was more or less, we gave up the jumpers in 1978, I think it was. And we decided we would buy proper uniforms. We had trousers and jackets, shirts and ties. And we raised the money and we got the uniforms, and we started playing more complicated stuff at that time for us, and we started these marches and stuff like that there, and the band just progressed on the contesting in 1982 when we entered All-Ireland Championships in the Guildhall, and we were second that year, and we were a bit being our local band. But we just got stuck on through our conductor then was Drew Porter from a Church Hall band. He dedicated a lot of time to us. And in 1983, we won the All-Ireland for the first time. I won the Flute Bands League for the first time. And we presently hold the record of 7 in a row for the All-Ireland Championships. After we won it the first time, we won it another 6 times in a row. And that's more or less how we get going and upgraded the music through contesting and through Porter.
So Drew was really the sort of trailblazer in the band to improve?
Oh, well, we had boys within the band who was quite qualified too. Derek Moore put a lot of work on it and writing out the tunes and stuff for us at that time before Drew appeared in the scene. And Derek would have took the practices for a while, and then what happened then was Drew would have come up and brushed up on the music, pointed out any wee mistakes we had before the contest, and he became our full-time conductor then after that.
Yeah, would have a lot of stories about Drew Porter, just like we would with the Churchill, but when Drew passed away, how much of an effect did that have on the band?
Oh, Drew still sadly must. He'll never be forgot. He was just a character, as you probably know yourself. He conducted your own band, and He was just very, very patient. Never heard him saying a bad word about anybody, and dedicating his time to the band.
So around that time as well in the 70s, you had other bands and new buildings forming. You probably maybe you were one of the first in the city. Would you think?
We were the first flute band in the city at that time. Yeah.
Do you feel proud that other bands came out of that? And
yes, well, I think we started the ball rolling as regards the bands in the town. There was the band on the Waterside, 2 bands on the Waterside started. Then Foil Defenders and New Buildings, they started. And I think it was good that these bands, at that time there was a lot of trouble, and the bands actually kept a lot of people out of trouble.
that was the point I was going to go on to now. Obviously, you were just in the fountain. You said you really stayed in the fountain.
Yeah.
So the band, that gave you an opportunity to learn a talent and move out and explore places, whether it's a band parade or with the Apprentice Boys or whatever. How did that
So, sorry, some of the older members in the band, the band just became their lives. They dedicated everything to the band at that time. There was people working every night in the week, more or less. Some of them writing music, some of them doing other things. But you get out there on the Friday night, maybe they'd Lamavati. And that was your outing for the week. And you had a few beers maybe after the parade.
Yep.
And you come back home here and might have been 11 or 12 o'clock, and the boys would have stood about even chatting to 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning about the night they had, you know.
As well as that then, so do you think the band also kept you away from like antisocial behaviour, as we would call it now?
The reason why the band was so successful was because we had dedication and discipline. And if a band has discipline, a band has everything.
And do you think that other people still coming through, not just necessarily the William King, but other bands are still learning that discipline and music and the talent, and I think it's a good thing to be in a band?
I think it's a brilliant thing to be in a band. There's people say bands can be offensive, but we don't go out to offend anybody. When we first went on the street, I would say maybe £100 or a couple £100 even put us on the road with the jumpers at £1 each, and the flutes were very dear at that time. But they keep our band on the road now. They re-uniform us. Flutes and drums would take 40 grand.
So, as you say, it's a costly profession. So, and it was a timely profession as well. With nearly every week you'd be practicing.
Oh, we practice twice a week, for about 6 months of the year, for contests and stuff. But everybody enjoys it, you know. So we haven't much problem. We have a good foundation there as members. And our people come and go. They come and they learn and stay with us for a while. But we still have a good base.
So you said there about as well in the 80s, about even in the competitions in the 80s too, you were also engaged by the Legion for Remembrance Sunday. Was that a proud moment to be asked to do that?
It was indeed, and we still do it. And we do it with pride, and it's one of the proudest days of the year when you're leading the Legion to a diamond in remembrance of the dead.
So the band, then in more recent years, you've went from what a Blood and Thunder style band, and then the Melody, and then winning 7 in a row, as you said. So you're a very respected band. So this is a Good Relations Week, and we're going to talk about how the band's changed in style from the early days, and then winning 7 in a row in the 80s, and then into Good Relations, sort of, or playing in different festivals. So the first one I remember was probably Limerick and St. Patrick's Day, and I know my band Churchill and the Hamiltons and yourselves did it. So how did that come about, and was there any sort of reservation about doing it, or?
No, we had no reservation about doing it at all. We were invited down. We were a wee bit apprehensive of what kind of reception we would get at the start, but I have to say we were more than welcome in the streets of Limerick by the people that was on the streets watching the band. There were actually people coming up and asking us what merch was that we were playing, but they liked the music we were playing. We actually went up the next day then and played at the Limerick races.
Yep.
Horse racing. and we played up there, and we got a good reception up there as well.
Do you think then that our culture then was being shown positively and being shown to a different community that weekend? And
Well, I think majority of the people look at bands. They know nobody pays £40,000. They get a band rigged up. They go out and offend people or hurt people's feelings. And the music we're playing is not non-sectarian. There's nothing on it, and we don't mean to offend anybody, and we don't try to offend anybody. And I think we're well respected in the town as well. For one of the things we've done after many years ago, when there was a lot of trouble about the diamond, when crowds were yelling from both traditions, we had a meeting with the police, and even to this very day, we decided that we would march up onto Bishop Street and we would play for half an hour. And when we were playing for that half an hour, it brought the crowd up from the diamond to watch the band. So it prevented a lot of trouble on the diamond as well. And we still do that to this very day.
do you think that's a bit that maybe as well as sort of like a tourist attraction now for part of the day now?
All the tourists are flocking around you. You know, they love the music. You know, they love the music.
You were saying there about playing in a fla too.
Yeah, Kesla, Daniel O'Donnell's country. We went down there. Ratafast was the band, and Emma was it Emerald Sweets. Crowd had their two bands down there, and they invited us down to Kesla one Sunday, and went down and played down there, and got a good reception as well.
And then going on then to recently, you were probably instrumental with Derek as well in the formation of the Londonderry bands from with a few other bands in the city. How did that come about?
Well, it was Julia Key. Julia Key. I started more or less we meeting out at the Waterside Park, and Derek and I went to it, and one thing led to another, and then Derek, he went on for a job as coordinator at that time, and he got the job, and the band's forum was formed.
Did you think it was good that the bands in the city at that time were willing to come together and work together and even try and tell their own story? Or?
Some of the bands is a lot of younger members than us, and what actually happens is the younger fellas in the bands see what it does to be disciplined when they are out with the band. They have to come, everything has to be polished up, their shoes, all the rest of it, have to be neat and tidy. And on the street, they have to be on their best behaviour. So there is a bit of discipline getting put on these young boys, and it seems to have worked.
How much of a frustration at that time especially was it that traditional media weren't picking up? Like you were talking there about the Fla and the St. Patrick's Day. Was that ever talked about in like the BBC or any?
Only time the BBC or any programmes was interested was when there was a protest against the parades and there was confrontation, and that was the only thing they reported on.
Was that a source of frustration for the band?
Very frustrating. Very, very frustrating because, as I say, you don't spend £40,000 to go out and offend people.
So moving on then, the bands form and started then with a lot of different events and building relationships. So the Wall City Tattoo in 2013 would have been probably a highlight for you, would it?
Fantastic.
What was that like for playing with people with different traditions?
Fantastic. It was just fantastic. On that night, it was just, the atmosphere was, I think it was the best one they did run, was the first one in Everton Square, and it was packed, and it was just a great feeling to be there, you know what I mean?
Then off the back of that, you probably were building relationships with other bands. So what was it like then playing with the Strabane Brass and other events? And
the boys from Strabane was very good. We got on well with them, and we did manage to get through our new conductor now as Stuart, and we had the brass and the flutes playing together, and it was very enjoyable.
Do you think that there would be a lot of similarities between the bands in the sense of just being about the music and different traditions?
Certainly is. That's all. That's what it's about. Having enjoyment and going out there and enjoying your music and learning from all our bands, and our bands will be learning from you. That's what it's all about.
You played in the Pan Celtic Festival as well in Waterloo Place.
Yes.
And that was probably the first time a band had played in there, maybe 50 years. Did you feel a sense of pride? You were sort of opening up a space that hadn't been associated with marching bands for a long time.
Well, as I say, at the start, you're a wee bit apprehensive of going down there, but at the end of the day, we've no reason to fear going anywhere, and we don't. But we went down and we played Alamy, St. Joseph's, and we played in Maroon, and there was a large crowd, and they all responded in a nice way.
So what's been the highlight then in the last sort of 10 years for as members of bands for the Wine King?
What it's been like?
What's been sort of our highlights for you? As we've already mentioned the tattoo and the Pan Celtic Festival. It's just getting up different opportunities to play with different traditions.
More or less, that's more or less what it does, and it just shows that people interested in bands that's what they're interested in. They're not interested in where you're from, what creed you are, what religion you are. They're just interested in music and making a nice sound.
So where do you see basically the future for the band now in the next few years?
Well, obviously, some of us boys are getting to the age now that we're getting old, but we'll never leave a band. We're on the band for life, and hopefully the younger generation now, which is coming on, seems to have an interest, and not maybe just as dedicated as what we were, because they have all our options now, but we have a good crowd of fellas, and we're going well.
Is it true that at the early days of the band, you said that you had to be a certain age and then you left?
That's quite correct. Whenever we started, we said with anybody over 25 had to retire because they've been too old to play. So I'll be retiring now next week.
What happened whenever you started getting to 25? Did you just think, well, we have to keep it going?
Just wasn't mentioned.
So the band then, as you made from humble beginnings here in the Fountain, the community supported it. How proud are you now that you've reached the 50th anniversary?
It's just unbelievable. We just seems like 5 or 6 years ago when everything started out. But as one of the fellas was saying up in the Mayor was doing an hour program with us, and he said, how long have you been friends? And we said 55 years. No, from over maybe 8 or 9.
Yep.
And it just sounded so unbelievable, like, you know. And we done a CD. Well, our last CD was called Band of Brawlers, and the boys in the band are like brothers. If one is in bother or need help, there's always somebody there to help you. And that's the way the band operated for the last 50 years. If you were in the band and you needed something, or you needed to do something along with somebody, you always turned in or a member of the band, and they were there for you.
Is there anything else then, John, that you want to add about your experience in the band?
Well, the only experience I would say, now, for the first 40 years for Sake Arrogant, the band was self-funded. And we used to joke, because we're in a very, very small area, that it was the dearest band in the town to be on. Because that's true. Because everything we done was out of our own pockets, and out of members' pockets. A couple of draws here and there. But now this last 10, there was funding actually going on the area at the time for our wee groups, but we were never involved in it. We never get no funding at all. And the people that got the funding never made an attempt to help us with funding. But this last while, through the Bands Forum and Ulster Scots, we've got some help, and it's very, very much appreciated.
That's probably something that isn't really talked about, how bands are self-funded or across the country. Not many of them do get any funding.
No, well, as I say, we didn't up until 10 years ago, and as I say, no, it's different. Some of these bands are in large estates and large areas, and I mean, we've got the support from the people on the fountain throughout the years, but like it's only a small area. So, no, it wasn't really enough to keep the band going. So the boys was dipping on their own pocket at the times. They keep the things going.
Thank you very much for joining me today, John, on this podcast. And we'd like to wish the William King well for their 50th anniversary, and here's the next 50 years.
Thank you very much. I don't think I'll see another 50, but thank you anyway.